Imagine finding a cigarette lighter buried deep inside a prehistoric cave. It would feel completely impossible. You expect stone tools, broken bones, maybe blackened rocks from an ancient campfire. You do not expect an object connected to smoking. Cigarettes belong to gas stations, warning labels, and modern life. They seem far removed from people who hunted with wooden spears. But what if smoking did not begin with tobacco? What if its story started hundreds of thousands of years before the first cigarette ever existed? The answer hides inside something so ordinary that most of us never question it: fire. Long before humans planted crops, built cities, or invented writing, they learned one skill that changed every generation that followed. They learned how to keep a fire alive after sunset. That single achievement made nights warmer, predators more cautious, food easier to digest, and communities safer. Yet every advantage arrived with the same silent companion: smoke. Imagine walking into a shelter nearly 500,000 years ago. Before you notice the people, you notice the air. It is warm, heavy, and filled with the smell of burning wood. Archaeologists have uncovered ancient hearths that remained in the same locations for generations, showing that families repeatedly gathered around the same fires year after year. Entire childhoods unfolded beside drifting smoke. Today, we design buildings to remove smoke as quickly as possible. Our ancestors built their lives around it. That sounds like misery until you look closer. Smoke discouraged mosquitoes and other biting insects. Meat hanging above the fire spoiled more slowly. Warm shelters became harder for many predators to approach. Living with smoke was uncomfortable, but it quietly solved several larger problems at once. That pattern appears throughout human history. The best solution is not always the most pleasant one. It is usually the one that helps you survive. Then something curious happened. At some point, someone threw unfamiliar plants onto the fire. Most simply burned away. One released a sweet scent. Another filled the shelter with thick smoke that stung the eyes. A different plant drove insects away almost immediately. Nobody understood chemistry. Nobody knew about nicotine, alkaloids, or essential oils. They simply noticed patterns. Ancient humans survived because they paid attention to tiny differences. Which berries were safe? Which roots eased pain? Which leaves caused sickness? Burning plants became another experiment. Fire revealed properties that eating them never could. Those experiments slowly changed the relationship between humans and smoke. It was no longer just something people endured. It became something they explored. Archaeologists cannot identify the exact moment that happened because burned plants rarely survive for thousands of years. Organic evidence disappears long before written history begins. But another discovery tells a remarkable story. They found carefully crafted pipes. A campfire produces smoke by accident. A pipe produces smoke on purpose. That means someone believed smoke itself had value, but not because it was enjoyable. Across different parts of the world, people burned herbs, bark, tree resin, and fragrant leaves for many different reasons. Some smoke eased discomfort. Some kept insects away. Some became part of healing ceremonies. Others were believed to carry prayers or connect the living with unseen spirits. Without laboratories, repeated observation became knowledge. Knowledge became tradition. Tradition became culture. Here is the twist. None of those people were using tobacco. For most of human history, tobacco existed only in the Americas. The rest of the world knew nothing about it. Yet people everywhere kept experimenting with smoke, searching for useful plants in their own landscapes. They were not looking for tobacco. They were searching for possibilities. And on another continent, one ordinary leaf was quietly waiting for the moment it would transform the entire world. Across thousands of years, people discovered plants that filled empty stomachs, healed wounds, or produced fibers for clothing. Most valuable crops solved obvious survival problems. One plant offered something entirely different. It changed the way people felt. Long before European ships crossed the Atlantic, indigenous societies throughout the Americas had already built deep relationships with tobacco. It was carefully cultivated, traded, and protected, but rarely because it provided food. Its importance reached far beyond nutrition. In many communities, tobacco became part of ceremonies, diplomacy, healing, and shared responsibility. A pipe was often less about one person smoking than an entire group expressing trust. Modern smoking often feels personal. Ancient tobacco was usually collective. That difference matters because it shaped how the plant spread. People did not first value tobacco as entertainment. They valued it because it carried meaning. Over generations, farmers selected plants with larger leaves, stronger effects, and better resistance to local conditions. Without realizing it, humans were domesticating a plant that influenced behavior rather than hunger. For thousands of years, that relationship remained almost entirely within the Americas. Entire kingdoms in Europe rose and disappeared without seeing a single tobacco leaf. Farmers in Asia never planted it. African rulers never taxed it. Most of the world had no idea the plant even existed. Then history changed course. When European explorers reached the Americas, they encountered something unexpected. They watched indigenous people drawing smoke from dried leaves with remarkable care and respect. Some visitors believed the practice was medicinal. Others thought it was spiritual. A few considered it dangerous. Almost nobody imagined they were looking at one of history's future global industries. Tobacco crossed the Atlantic beside potatoes, tomatoes, maize, and cacao. Yet it behaved differently from every other major crop. Those plants spread because people needed them. Tobacco spread because people wanted it. That simple difference made it extraordinarily powerful. Merchants quickly realized dried tobacco survived long ocean voyages with little damage. It occupied little space, stayed valuable for months, and attracted repeat buyers. Before long, ships carried enormous quantities across the Atlantic. Warehouses filled with dried leaves. Markets expanded from port cities into entire empires. Then governments noticed something even more valuable than the plant itself: demand. People often delayed buying luxury goods during difficult years. They postponed expensive celebrations, they reduced unnecessary spending, many still bought tobacco. A product that people continued purchasing through war, famine, and economic hardship became impossible for rulers to ignore. Across Europe, governments introduced taxes, monopolies, and strict controls. Some even tried banning tobacco before discovering an uncomfortable truth. Taxing it generated far more money than stopping it. The leaf remained exactly the same. Everything around it changed. Sacred ceremonies slowly became commercial transactions. Local traditions became international trade. A plant once shared around small gatherings now connected farmers, merchants, governments, sailors, and consumers scattered across continents. Here is where the story becomes even stranger. None of those people understood why tobacco held such power. They simply observed the results. Modern neuroscience shows that nicotine reaches the brain within seconds after inhalation, influencing circuits involved in attention, learning, and reward. Ancient societies knew nothing about receptors or neurotransmitters, yet they did not need scientific vocabulary to recognize repeated human behavior. Civilizations built enormous systems around tobacco centuries before anyone understood the biology hidden inside the smoke. History often works that way. People discover something useful first. They explain it much later. And once industry learned how to make smoking faster, cheaper, and easier than ever before, the relationship between humans and tobacco changed forever. For centuries, smoking required patience. People carved pipes, prepared loose tobacco, or rolled leaves by hand. Every cigarette demanded time and effort. That alone limited how often most people smoked. Then, machines rewrote the story. In the late 19th century, automatic cigarette-making machines began producing thousands of cigarettes every hour. What had once been a slow ritual became a mass-produced product. Prices fell, supply exploded. Smoking no longer required preparation. It required only a match. One invention quietly changed human behavior on a global scale. History repeats this pattern again and again. When something becomes easier, people usually do it more often. Not because human nature changes overnight, because the system around them does. By the early 20th century, cigarettes had become part of everyday life across much of the world. They appeared in newspapers, restaurants, trains, offices, and movie screens. Soldiers carried them during wartime. Advertisements linked smoking with confidence, freedom, and success. Before long, millions of people no longer saw smoking as unusual. They saw it as normal. And once something feels normal, people rarely stop to ask why it exists. Then science caught up. Doctors began noticing unusual patterns. Lung cancer appeared far more often among heavy smokers than expected. As larger studies followed millions of people over many years, the evidence became impossible to ignore. Smoking was not simply associated with disease, it was helping cause it. The discovery transformed medicine. It transformed public health. It transformed the conversation, but it did not erase the system that centuries of history had already built. That is why this story is far more complicated than telling people to stop smoking. A tobacco farmer depends on the harvest. Factory workers depend on production. Truck drivers move the shipments. Shop owners sell the products. Governments collect billions in taxes. Consumers make daily choices. Each person sees only one small piece. Together, they create a system so large that no single individual controls it. That may be the real answer to our original question. Humans did not suddenly start smoking one day. The relationship evolved step by step. First came fire, then came living with smoke. Later came experimenting with plants. Indigenous cultures gave tobacco meaning, empires gave it markets, machines gave it speed. Science revealed its hidden cost. Every generation inherited the previous chapter and quietly added another. Now imagine that prehistoric cave one last time. The lighter still looks impossible lying beside an ancient fire, but now you know something different. The lighter does not represent the beginning of the story. It represents its newest chapter. The real beginning was never tobacco. It was the first night our ancestors decided the fire should not go out. Everything that followed, rituals, trade routes, empires, factories, advertisements, hospitals, and public health campaigns grew from that single decision to keep the flames alive until morning. The smoke still rises exactly as it did hundreds of thousands of years ago. Everything surrounding it has changed. History often works that way. The objects themselves remain surprisingly simple. A leaf, a cup, a coin, a piece of paper. The invisible systems built around them become unimaginably complex. That is why the biggest forces shaping civilization rarely look extraordinary. They hide inside ordinary things that people stop noticing, until someone asks a simple question. And once you begin asking those questions, everyday life never looks quite the same again. If this documentary changed the way you see something as ordinary as smoke, imagine what you'll discover next. Subscribe now, because every week, we uncover another hidden system behind everyday life, revealing the surprising history, science, and human decisions that quietly shaped the modern world. The next time you pick up an everyday object, you may realize it has a story just as unbelievable as this one, and chances are, that story has been hiding in plain sight all along.